Welcome back to the arena in the boardroom. So, a little bit of a hiatus last week. Didn't put anything out, but trust me, I've got a couple of things in the bank that we're going to be tossing out there. Even got a couple of interviews scheduled for an upcoming episode. So, cool things still happening. Still hoping to get a couple of folks ready and right to get with us here on the platform as well to start producing some of their own stuff. We're rocking and rolling. So, this episode in itself, I feel like I left a little bit of meat on the bone from the last time we talked, and this is going to be the perfect follow-up to it. The last episode was who is at fault for a bad hire? So how about we talk about preventing one from happening? Sadly, because hiring is so diverse and wide-ranging, I won't be able to give you any real secrets to solving the issue, but we're going to make it a good discussion anyway. First off, the drink of the episode. It's summertime, and last week I went to one of the more underrated and one of my favorite places in existence, Sonic. They have an ocean water drink that is amazing, and it reminds me of my childhood. So think that, but with a little alcohol tossed in there. As always, the recipe is in the description. Second thing, simple framing. We're going to change the phrase bad hire to mishire. A little bit less subjective, a little easier to work with. A bad hire really just implies that the person was bad, when, again, they could have just been a poor fit. So we are going to frame these as mishires. All right, a lot of directions that we can go in, but I'd be remiss if I didn't take this to a sports place first. This platform was built by sports to adapt to the people outside of it. I say that because I don't want to make it seem like because sports are where my background lies that I believe that is the fix for all that what is ailing your organization. It is not. In fact, you could pick a sport. We get it just as wrong just as many times as we get it right. But there are other factors that can tilt the scale. Looking at what Carolina Panthers owner David Tepper said a couple years ago when his team was featured on Amazon Prime's All or Nothing, he said that the NFL was built for everyone to go 8-8, which, if you reach back further into history, was former Commissioner Pete Rozell's dream. A league that has parity to the point where anybody in any given year could become a champion. And for the most part, that does hold true. Because of the salary cap draft structure, any team in the NFL can go from worst to first in an instant. Again, other factors at play, but broadly, it can happen just that quick. But why is that? Smart personnel decisions that are rooted in nuance, not impulsivity. And what does that mean? It means looking beyond someone's talent and assessing their ability to fit. That's a word that you've heard me use more than a few times, but you want somebody to be able to fit within the structure that you are building and providing. A great example right now, drifting away from the NFL, is the Miami Heat, a team that just recently lost the NBA Finals. A team built through culture, unheralded players that are outplaying what their perception is. That perception, though, is what hinders many organizations when you can't look beyond what you see on the surface. Everyone loves to make a splash, a flashy hire that you can show to everyone and say, this is what we got, disregarding whether or not they can function with your environment. Sports is the same way. A splashy free agent signing for too much above market value, or overthinking yourself into drafting the wrong player because you can envision them becoming a star for your team, it happens. We are human. I myself have been guilty of it. We are results-oriented individuals, and there is no better result than being the one who brought greatness into a team and helped it thrive. The problem, though, is there are no shortcuts, and when you look at high-functioning teams in and out of sports, they have a lot of commonalities. Strong leadership at the top, core pieces below, solid pieces in the middle, and maybe some niche skill sets sprinkled around that can contribute at the right time. Having that in place, a mishire will not hurt you because you will have had enough around it to level everything out. It'll still cost you, but you should be able to withstand that, and that is where you can potentially look to take more risks as well. The boom or bust argument where someone can maybe be considered a luxury and you decide that we're going to take a flyer on them because they could give us something that we may need. They might have a bit of a rap sheet, but they might be high functioning. Maybe in your environment they can thrive because they're reduced to being a role player. If they have to be the star of the show and do more, perhaps they're not a good fit because that clashes with what their personality really functions best in. That right there, that assessment is really how you avoid mishires, but it goes deeper than that. The idea of building a team is attractive to many who don't want to be in charge. Kidding. But Being in charge sucks, and if you really want to be in charge, be my guest because I have no desire to really be in a position like that anytime soon. But building a team is actually the most fun part because you get to envision how the parts really kind of start fitting together, and it goes way beyond skill sets if you do it the right way. Now, looking back long ago, this goes back to my childhood, I was always an information junkie. Any piece of information given to you really could be useful. I always loved the idea of scouting, which in personnel is a very key component, as I've mentioned before. If you can imagine me as an 11-year-old playing Madden on the PS2, recording the online matches he played against people, and then watching it like literal film just to understand how and why I beat somebody, or how and why I got beat. I also cried a lot of the times after I lost because I took it that seriously, and I have no shame about that because when I look at how I operate now and how I approach all of these different elements, it translates. Information is power, and you have to study your opponents. You have to study your team, and most importantly, you got to study yourself. How far you take that is up to you because different information has different value to everybody. Think on that just for a little bit. Building a team in any sport is a delicate process. Skills, egos, personalities, wants, there are different things to juggle at every level. Coaching middle school girls, my priority was the experience. How can I get these girls to like each other? How can I get them to have fun? And then what is their trajectory for growth? High school, you have a goal. Everyone wants to be on varsity. What does being on varsity look like and what standards are being set to make that an attainable goal for every young woman in that program? How do you create those realistic standards? At the college level, you are working with the best of the crop, all jaded by their teen years and all with their own aspirations, both as an athlete and as a scholar. Because those roster spots are capped, usually at a hard number due to finances or resources, every roster spot that you give up needs to be measured against everything else that exists in the now and what may exist in the future. A recruiting mistake could be highly detrimental in a locker room, which is the number one thing we as coaches try to protect. In an organization, the thought should be no different, especially if you have a good team in place. Protect that dynamic. So for me, how do I prevent a mishire? Well, I start with knowing my team. In one of my more recent positions, we were pretty capped on how many hours we had, and when some of those hours freed up, I asked my 2 full-time staff what they needed as it related to help around them. And I built the team from there, taking account their work styles and temperaments and what would be most useful to them. That's a way. I understand maybe doing the opposite and just hiring who you think is best, but as a manager, I did the same thing with kids as young as middle school, if you can believe it. I believe in agency. I'm not a dictator, and I can't play one on TV or anything of the sorts. This also opens up the dialogue between parties, and you can get a deeper understanding of what they like, dislike, and maybe what they want. Now, it can be jarring to some because people really don't like making decisions if it means that some of the blame could be pinned on them if it fails. Now, that's in a dysfunctional situation, but it was selective. If I trusted you as a player or perceived subordinate to get your input, it was for a reason, and it was because I felt you were going to have good insight as to what may be helpful to the collective. Teams that coach themselves often perform better than teams that just get their direction from a coach. It's a delicate balance that I was really in favor of because I wanted people to feel empowered in their roles and let leadership develop naturally. So, when it came to bringing new people into that ecosystem, it was about how they fit into what already existed. So all they really had to do was come in, fill the role, and do what they had to do. At times, admittedly, there were very mixed results. Again, reasons I'm not clamoring to go back into leadership unless I really had the leverage to shape the team the way I wanted, and that's everything from a resource perspective. But when I evaluated human capital, it was done in 3 phases. What are you? What do you want? And what can you become? The what are you question is broad. Are you a student? Are you a parent? What are you? Are you just a body? Because there's use for just functional bodies in the right system, but in order to bring them into a situation, I wanted to know broadly what they were, and that really took on many forms depending on the person you were talking to. What do you want? That was the most important question to ask. Do you just need a check? Do you want growth opportunities? Do you want to be the star of the show? Find this out because their wants may not only clash with what's needed at that time, it may not even be available. What can you become? This is all projection, and to me it's the most fun part of building a team. It's the idea of what this could all look like when it's functioning at its very best. This is important because based on what that person wants, that can shape what they can be within your system. If you have a need for someone who wants to take a role and expand it, you may have a very valuable piece. If you have someone who's motivated by money only and you have them managing people, you may not have somebody who fills the role the way you want them to. A great prospect can become a distressed asset when you ignore other aspects of the situation. Don't be blinded by talent or potential of somebody because at the end of the day, it still needs to be applied in the right way. Now, as an employee, believe it or not, you have way more agency in this situation than you think, because at the end of the day, you have to accept a job that is offered to you. And don't think that you have to. Now, of course, that's harder in the moment to think that way, especially when you may need a job, but to be fair, there's a lot of awful jobs out there in every industry, and I'm not just talking about the tasks. Even your most difficult jobs will still range in difficulty depending on the system that you're working in. In fact, look no different than any sports team. The difference between a good owner and a bad one is evident. See the Washington Commanders under Dan Snyder or the LA Clippers under Donald Sterling. It matters, so before you mess your life up, think long and hard before you accept an offer and whether or not it's the right offer for you. What are some ways to prevent that though? Ask questions, set boundaries, make sure that your personal checklist is met. I could tell you some wild interview stories from the last sequence before I ended up in the role that I'm in now, and there are many times that I ended that interview telling them I was no longer interested or sent them an email 5 minutes later that I didn't want to continue the conversation. Think about your career as your own personal locker room. You want to protect that at all costs. Even deeper though, assess yourself. Ask similar questions about what your desires are, what your goals are, and how you want to achieve them. Don't think long term, think about immediate survival. What are you walking into that could be both positive and negative? There's no perfect situation. The environment may be great, but the pay may not be. The pay may be awesome, but the work may be soul draining. Those are extremes on the spectrum, but if you search for perfection, you will never be satisfied, and you're going to be looking a whole lot longer than you want to. Remember, as an employee, your only obligation is to do the job that you are hired to do. If you don't feel like that's possible, find a situation that will allow you to do so, which again, easier said than done. I can acknowledge how difficult the job search process can be. It's long, lengthy, and taxing, and both sides lie. If you get a job that's a poor fit compared to what you thought it would be, resign. Save yourself the trouble and chalk the experience up so that you know how to be better looking for that situation next time. Again, I say this only if you can. Not everyone has the luxury to do this, but if you do, find some sanity at work because it is absolutely worth it. Okay, now my favorite part is where I get to bash on companies, organizations, and people who really have a whole lot of control throughout the process. I sense a tradition is forming, but how do you as a company prevent mishires? Be precise, be intentional, have a plan. Broadly have a plan. Know your needs and what you provide and how that fits into the equation. You do not have an excuse as an organization to have a ton of mishires. You're the one with the jobs. You are investing in the human capital. No different than any other investment. Do your research, and if they constantly crash, that means you need to make some adjustments. Think about your company. Are you being realistic with what you are looking for? Do you pay minimum wage? Do you have hazards that come with a job? Do you have poor leadership because people are in positions they shouldn't be in? Whatever it is, if you are having a string of mishires, there's likely a root cause and it's often internal. People need to work. We always will, unfortunately, but no one, and I repeat, no one wants to work just to work if they had an alternative. So knowing that, you as an organization should be working tooth and nail to make sure that when you do get good people, you find a way to keep them and appreciate them. You just need to do the work to attract them. And nowadays, that requires more than just money. Money might draw someone in, but it certainly won't keep them, especially if they're working so hard for it they have no time to enjoy it. People won't stay if they feel like they won't be successful in their role and they won't develop. The days of people accepting abuse in the workplace no longer exist, and abuse can take on many forms. But know that people are prioritizing themselves now more than ever. In defense of any organization, though, hiring is not a flawless science. It's difficult because every human is a variable. They're a variable in the application process, and they're a variable every day they clock in. The expectation is not that anyone gets it all right all the time. You should just get it right far more than you get it wrong, otherwise you're going to have major gaps within your system. Hiring is difficult both as a prospect and as a company. Both sides are projecting their best to get what they want as they should. It matters for companies because the sourcing and onboarding process is expensive and firing people is very difficult at times. For prospective employees, you need to work, and it's as simple as that. The dynamic between the two complicates things, but no side really has more leverage than the other. An employee can leave at their leisure, as most jobs are at will. All right, wrapping up. Take it seriously, because a body just to have a body, not a wise investment. Similar to just having any job. If you're just working aimlessly and getting no purpose out of it, you are not going to last very long. There are many factors to look at this, but if you are intentional with your process, you will win more than you lose. And at the end of the day, that is all you can hope for. All right, that is it. Be on the lookout for some more stuff to drop. I've got a class project that I did that is going to kind of be the spiritual follow-up to this episode, talking a little bit about how to kind of put that system in place when you're kind of starting from ground zero. So feeling really good about that. I've got a proposal this week. I'm going to be proposing my dissertation research. So if I survive that and I'm not too emotionally scarred, I'll try to get some more stuff up there as well. Got a couple more episodes being drafted. I'm going to get them in the bank and try to get back to putting regular content together. As always, love these discussions, love the topics. We're never going to run out of stuff. And I think that's the charm of all this. People are constantly evolving, and I think these practices are going to constantly evolve too. So as we start to explore more, dive a little deeper, who knows what we're going to unearth. Might even start adding music to this thing, maybe an intro and a bed track to make things a little bit more festive. Anyway, I could keep rambling, but thanks for listening as always, and I will see you next time.